Welcome everybody. Now we're on the series of videos, and over the last few weeks, a few videos I've been doing some testing of some H&G paints, which is Hanford and Green. Now they were kind enough to supply me some litre tins just to try out to see what I thought. Now you've seen videos on their water-based gloss, which is there. You've seen videos on their acrylic satin, which is I think on the other side of Doris the Door. Or it even might be on Dave the Door, I can't remember now. Now, the last video I did was the touchGard, and I think the touchGard was on the other side of Doris the Door. Now, the touchGard is supposedly on a par with equivalence to Jono's AquaGuard, because it was a paint that is resistant to any hand and greasy finger marks and things like that. But moving on from that one, which we thought was all right, yeah, we were quite happy with that. The next one that Hanford and Green have developed, should I say, use the word developed, is ScuffGard. Now, this, as you've seen the thumbnail, I've got a tin of ScuffX to pitch it against. And I don't want to say pitch it against, I just want to see how this feels, applies, looks. We're going to do Dave the Door and see how it looks, because as our main satin water-based paint that we use on woodwork, we use ScuffX quite a lot. Now, what's nice about ScuffX is the quick turnaround on recoat times. It flows out lovely. It's got a nice feel to it. Brush marks are down to a minimum, and it's quite a silky smooth finish. Now, in the blurb for this is reading the same sort of thing. This is an interior-exterior paint. It's a scuff-resistant, hard-wearing finish that if you mark it, it should be resistant to that. It's also interior walls you can use it on. You can use it on your woodwork. You can use it on the radiators if you feel like it, as long as you've got the appropriate primers. Now, other than that, I mean, you've got an exceptional recoat time, which the previous paints have been an hour to I can't even say that, an hour to 2 hours. And they have actually recoated quite quickly. Now, the other paints have been all right. The gloss was all right, but as I said in the video, if you've not watched it, please look in that corner. Glosses are much of a muchness, and the opacity of paints, the body that a paint's got, is very down to different, I'll say different manufacturers, but a lot of these paint manufacturers are all about the same when it comes to these glosses. Grinning is a major factor, particularly with a gloss paint. Now, your satins and your eggshells are a lot better for not showing things like that. The H&G, the eggshells, the satin finishes, the touchGard weren't bad on the opacity. But I want to see what this ScuffGard's like, because I know how good ScuffX is, and it would be nice to find an alternative paint that is cheaper and stands up as good on woodwork. We don't use it on walls. On woodwork as what the actual ScuffX is. So I've had this paint. It's getting colder. It's colder months. I've actually had this paint warming, and I don't know if you've seen a while back. I've got a crock pot. I've got a slow cooker to warm paints, particularly when I'm in this garage. I warm the paint slightly so it helps it flow out, all the usual, having warm paints. It's just one of these. It's nothing complicated, under 20 quid, and I've got a link in the Amazon associates below. But that fits nicely, a litre tin of paint, which is normally what you're requiring when you're doing gloss doors and bits and pieces like that. But you can put a bit of paint in there, in the pot, in its can. Just warm it up, 10-15 minutes on high power, or like I've had it on low, because I've had it on for about half an hour, and it just eases the painting off. So while we're in this cold garage, even though I've got a bit of heating on, I've got paint that is nice to apply. So let's crack on. Let's come back up. I've got my paint out. Now it's in there, using the usual brush of choice for when we're doing these sample test videos. It's the Knorr brush, it's the Heritage brush. Got to sniff the bristle. It's a nice brush to apply paint. Now, Dave has got Hanford and Green paint on already. We already had the all-purpose primer on from Hanford and Green. That's all been coated up. I've gave it a nib down, gave it a dust off, and I'm ready to go. Now, these paints Don't always need to have an undercoat on them, but if you do feel like you've got a change of colour, or you just want a little bit more opacity build up because there is a discrepancy in the colour that you're going over, because it might have been a dark cream or something like that, it's always good to put another coat on in between. So put your all-purpose primer on and then put your top coats on, and your top coats are 2 top coats. So let's see how we go. Now the paint's nice because it's still warm, and I'm applying it, not putting too much on, but starting with the mouldings, and I'm going to go around there first and then do the filling panel. I'll just give you a little bit of a brief talkie while I'm applying this, and I will say this goes on nice because it's warm. The paint, that is, not me. Now, we know that ScuffX flows out, and when you look at it, you don't see really any brush marks because it is flowed out so well. I'm hoping this does the same, because in the literature, it says that this has got an outstanding coverage. Because in the literature they've got here, it's excellent scuff resistance, outstanding coverage, exceptional recoat times, water-based formula, which we like, virtually no odour, and I've said this before in the videos, I can't really smell anything. You can get it in virtually any colour, and it's incredible durability. Now, ScuffGard is an outstanding tough interior, exterior paint for walls and woodwork with a lustrous, that's L-U-S-T-R-O-U-S, lustrous velvety finish. And that's what I'm probably trying to explain with how the ScuffX is. It's that velvety finish. Now, I've told you before about velvety looking paints. Sickens BL Satura was one that flowed out nicely and gave you that velvety. And I call it actually more of a UPVC sort of finish to your paint when it flows out. So let's see what this does. Now this is going on nicely. Just putting it on a crow's nest style, and then we're going to lay it off. Now, when you're working with water-based paints, don't fiddle about with them, get them on. I've wiped the brush down so there's not any more paint going on it. And then I'll just come up from the bottom and feather it in. Now that should flow out nicely. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to bore you through it. I'm going to paint this rest of this door. I'm going to get the heater on, blow it across, get it warm and dry, and then I'll come back to it either later today or first thing in the morning, and we'll get another coat on and we'll follow on this video. So yeah, so far so good. It applies nicely, and yeah, let's just see if this is a contender. We'll see. Morning everybody. Now I'm back. I didn't subject you to putting a second coat on of the scuffed guard yesterday. I waited about 4 hours, came back to it and coated it all up. Now, first initial thoughts are coating up and then putting a second coat on, because more than likely you're going to say to me, Phil, second coat always goes on better than the first. Yeah, we know that. But application wise, there was no issue putting that on. I'm not saying it's as, the paint application, it's not as thin. I'll say thin, not the operative word. It doesn't go on like ScuffX, and not many paints do. ScuffX feels very thin on the viscosity when you're putting it on. It actually goes on very easy. This actually felt like you were putting a paint on, if that makes sense. You actually felt you were actually doing something with your paint. You were working it, you could work it, and it actually applied by your crow's nest, horizontal, laying off with your tips, wiping your brush down and just literally laying off verticals on these panels, and however you need to do it, depending on the section of your door. Actually, application-wise was really nice. You can see, hopefully, that white, that brilliant white, I'm taking it, it's brilliant white, is a nice white. Some of them can be a little bit grey looking or a little bit creamy looking. But that actually was pretty good. Brushes, yes, it washed out fine. With it being more of an acrylic based property of a paint, more so than a hybrid. Bit of cold water to start rinsing out your brush, and then move on to some warm water. Add a bit of detergent to it. 5 minutes in, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, and you've got a nice clean brush again. There was no sediment of that paint sticking to the brush that made it all clacky or anything like that. So it actually washed out all right. Right, what you want to know is, does this stand up against its competitor, which we're saying is really ScuffX? Now, I'm not going to say to you, buy this instead of ScuffX. What I'm going to say to you is, ScuffX is really good. ScuffX comes in just under 4 litres for £108. Now, ScuffX does what it says it'll do on the tin. It's for a wall, it's for ceilings, it's for woodwork. You can go over metal and up, again, with the appropriate undercoat primers that you require. This ScuffGard does the same. Now, the difference is, this ScuffGard, a litre tin, and we'll do it on for litres, because sometimes if you're only doing a room and you've got a door and you've got a little bit of skirting to do and a door frame, you're only going to need a litre. You're not even going to need that. A litre of this is 32 quid. Now, if you take into account you can only buy ScuffX in that it's the American gallon, it's just under 4 litres, it's 3.7 something litres, and it's £108. Now, you can get it a bit cheaper than that if you shop around. Now, price for price, you're probably not looking at much difference if you break it down to that litre, because if you think 3 litres is going to cost you 96 quid of this, you're probably about right pitching it at the same price as ScuffX. The difference is you can buy a litre of this. You're not having to buy a full US gallon. So price for price, don't let price put you off, other than the quantity that you can buy it in. If you can buy ScuffX in a litre tin, there'd be more people using it. But if you're not buying it because it's the 4 litre, I'm going to say to you, give this a go. I'm feeling it with the back of my hand and finger. It hasn't got that feel like ScuffX, but it is a nice... I'm looking because the light's coming in from here. First thing in the morning, like I am now, I can actually look across it, see what the sheen level's like. The finish isn't like a flatter eggshell. Some paints eggshell are quite flat on the sheen scale, going from 0 to 100. This being that satiny, I'm going to go with about 15%. This isn't the sheen level that you get off at Everall Aqua 40. That's a lovely satin finish when it comes to a 40% sheen level. This is less than that. But saying that, it's a very nice finish. How hard wearing is it? Now, you've seen when I've done... That's my nails. I can just see where my nails are just... I'll say marking it. It's not marking it. It's just that you're running your fingers over it. It's not actually putting a mark across it. Let's see. The only mark I'm getting on that is because of the metal more scratching it, you know, not scraping it off, but scratching it. It's not leaving scuff marks like you'd imagine something would do on a cheaper emulsion. I've got no idea. Wait, stay there. Got my lad's sand wedge out. Right. Rubber of the golf handle. The grip. No. Let's get the... Is that marking any more than I'd expect? No, it's actually not marking other than you damaging the surface. It's not scuffing up. It's not. I can rub a bit of rubber on it now, look. That's the rubber transfer. I don't think you can see that. Yeah, it's a bit of rubber transfer there. Would you expect that on any paint? Yes, I think I would do anyway. Let me just see what else I've got. Oh, we're going for it today. We're going for it today. Now, my kids do cricket, and this is one of their quick cricket bats. You know, when they do the softball cricket, they've now moved on to hardball. Right. I'm damaging the surface because I'm banging it hard. But that's plastic. And other than me, I'd be getting on to my kids if they went with a cricket bat, plastic cricket bat, round on my doors. That's holding up really well. Let me get you in closer. You see where I've just damaged it there, banging it too hard, but is that acceptable? I think that's acceptable. So let's conclude on this. I've chipped it. I've hit it too hard and I've chipped it back down to the bare wood. Yeah, I would say you would get that with any paint. So I've chipped that back down to the bare wood. And on that bare wood, that if you've watched the previous videos, this door was burnt off. It had been originally an oil-based pink primers, and I went over it with the H&G All Primer. So I've actually gone through all that now, and bear in mind this door's only got, it's got about 5 or 6 coats on it, if that. So I've actually gone through that now because I've hit it too hard with a cricket bat. So let's put that away. But all in all, we're concluding. Well, we're going to do a coin test. You see that? That is surely what you'd expect if somebody went with a coin rubbing on the surface. And then if I start chipping away at that, it's still quite tight, but I can get that off. But don't forget, I've hit it really hard. This is what we want to do about testing, isn't it? But a coin test, I'm getting the metalness showing up on that surface. And I would say you would get that on most paints anyway. That has actually been quite hammered. But all in all, I think that is a paint that I'm going to say I will use that again. I would ask you to give it a go, see what you think, because it's all subjective, this is. And I would actually say I'm pretty impressed. The flow out of that paint, because I need to mention this, it's very little brush marks. The flow out's been very good. So being very little brush marks, it doesn't feel like you've put on a cheap acrylic water-based paint that does seem to dry off on you and leave, let's call it tram lines and brush marks in the surface. And again, I'll say to you, if you were rolling it, you'd have no issues rolling that as well. So all in all, pretty impressed with that paint. I would actually say if you're using the Hanford and Green paints, you've got the ScuffGard, you've got the touchGard, which is the one that will be resilient to hand fats and things. But you've also got that acrylic satin as well. I would say for the price difference, and there's not much in it between this, you're only looking at a few quid on litre tins. I would say don't bother with the acrylic satin. Just keep with the ScuffGard. Keep with the ScuffGard. I don't think you need to drop down a level. Keep with the ScuffGard. But all in all, other than I've now penetrated through onto the bare wood, that is standing up really well. And I think what I'll do a video quite soon, and we'll compare some of the paints and we'll see what they're all like to a coin test, and see what they're standing up like. But all in all, very good. And if there's some videos at the end, please click like and subscribe and watch those. Thank you. Bye bye.